We have breaking news. The Ottawa Senators have just traded Nikita Zaitsev to the Chicago Blackhawks. The cost, a second-round pick in this upcoming draft, and a fourth-round pick in 2026. All of that is going to Chicago in exchange for future considerations. I'm Ross Levitan alongside at Lalime's Martian. What was your immediate reaction when you saw this one?
They did it. They finally did it. We've been hearing about this trade for a long time, Ross, and getting that money off the books is such a big thing for this team going forward as far as flexibility goes. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do next year. Wishing Nikita all the best with his future endeavors here in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that's a good landing spot for him. Certainly not a team that's playoff bound, and you might see it as a tank commander type move. Hawks fans, I know you're still out there. We'll get to what he's going to bring on the ice a little bit later. I want to echo those sentiments. 203 games Zaitsev played for the Ottawa Senators, but let's be honest before we get into this deal, because in a vacuum, I like it. But this is Pierre Dorion wiping up a mistake, a big mistake. He had Cody Ceci with 1 year left of restricted free agency, and he went out and made a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He wanted Connor Brown. He got Connor Brown, who was a good foot soldier for 4 years in Ottawa, but it cost Nikita Zaitsev with 5 years left on a ridiculous contract that Lou Lamoriello signed him for. Not his fault. I would take that money too. But with that came expectations at $4.5 million per, and he was a defenseman that it just didn't work out, plain and simple. So this in itself just feels like Pierre Dorion mopping up a big, big, bad mistake that's cost the Senators now draft picks to get what is almost $7 million off the book. Nikita Zaitsev is due a signing bonus of $2 million this upcoming offseason, and then still $2.5 million on the salary, plus what he's making the rest of this season as well. He had a stint in Belleville. Certainly things were not good between the fan base and Zaitsev, but Martian, now that this one's over, the draft picks are gone. Where are you at with Pierre Dorion now, 8 days before the trade deadline?
Well, Pierre's got to be pretty happy with what he just got accomplished here, Ross, because, Frank Saravelli was talking a lot about how, with new ownership possibly coming in and him not maybe having the type of autonomy or flexibility that he would want when it comes to, having any kind of money in situation with flexibility in that regard. I think that, they didn't want to have to commit to any sort of financial, or it is money coming in like that. So, Pierre's got to be pretty pumped right now that he now has, Nikita's contract's worth of money to deal with here, and it's not going to really affect the books too much with that amount of money going out the door. So I really like it. I'm happy for it. I'm like I said before, I'm just pumped to see what he's going to do here with this little bit of flexibility he's now got.
I don't want this to become hyperbolic, and I think it has the potential to, but this is all hinging. Potentially Pierre Dorion's tenure as Senators GM hinges on where this money goes, because we know it's money in, money out, and he's been rumored with every single defenseman that you could possibly imagine coming to Ottawa. Where he decides to spend this money on the Senators' biggest weakness is going to define this team. And I would hesitate to say he's not going to wait 8 days. This team needs help right now, and they need points right now. Starting Friday in Carolina, they play 4 games in 5 days, 3 divisional teams, 2 against a team that's right neck and neck with them in the standing. So I have a nervous anticipation of what's next for Pierre Dorion, but certainly there was not going to be a next move before this albatross was moved out of the way, and he was able to do it. I think the cost is a lot. Now, I put a little tongue-in-cheek joke out on Twitter at Sens Central. I said, anyone who hates this trade, guess what? You would have said that the draft picks sucked too. You would have said they didn't maximize value. You would have said they took a player that they could have gotten the 3rd round in the 2nd. So you're never going to be happy. That's fine. I still think it's a hefty price. It is, for sure. But yeah, could they have waited until they pay the signing bonus? That's where I just wish they would have left him in Belleville, left him on the side. But at the same time, it's a business, and you want to do right by the player to an extent. Should mention, Zaitsev's agent is also Zub's agent. So I'm sure there's a little bit of, hey, we were good with you with the Zub negotiation. Like, at least give my client a fresh start. Clearly, things aren't going to work out here. Like, I think that back channel agent to GM thing does happen a lot more than fans want to give credence to.
Oh, 100% it does, Ross. Yeah, those guys have all these different little things, the relationships that they're working on. Like the GM job is a lot of that you're dealing with these same agents over and over again with the same players. So, 100%, that's a thing.
So, the return, future considerations. Have you gotten your future considerations jersey yet?
No, I might start looking for a new one though.
I was asking tongue in cheek, obviously, what number he'd wear, because I'd be up for a nice 2D future considerations on the back. Our good friend at Everyday Sens just posted Nikita Zaitsev's tenure in Ottawa. He had 7 goals and 45 points in 203 games. He averaged over 20 minutes a game, which I think we'll circle back on that. A 46% expected goals percentage, a minus 53 5-on-5 goal differential. And when he was on the ice at 5-on-5, the Senators were outshot by 338 in his 203 games. Not great. But what I will say is, of recent days, and you mentioned this too, he was serviceable. For the most part, though, that's because he was back down on a third pair. The reluctance to take him off the top pair over the last 2 years was almost a fireable offense from my point of view for this coaching staff. So finally they figured it out, but it was really too little too late. And that's kind of the theme of this trade. It's too little too late all over the place. The excitement just comes from this flexibility that they've also created.
I would love to hear Thomas Chabot's thoughts on this trade now that Nikita Zaitsev is actually gone, because without looking, I have to assume that Nikita Zaitsev was paired most with Thomas Chabot during his time here in Ottawa. And if you're really looking at that, like Chabot was being, he was tied to a bit of an anchor. He should be playing with a guy who can, play sturdy defense that will allow him to kind of be a little bit more of a rover, even though he's done less and less of that. Especially recently. But, having a guy like Zaitsev who you actually need to kind of worry about as a defensive partner is not ideal for a guy like Chabot, who's logging massive minutes and sometimes can get a little fatigued out there. And so, having to babysit Zaitsev for all these years, it's got to be a little bit of a breath of fresh air. But like you said, Zaitsev has been not noticeable over the last few months, and that's kind of just what we want out of him, right? Just like, don't show up and make a real big gaffe that's going to cost the team, because that's the kind of play that we got used to seeing out of him pretty often in his time here.
So I can do it 3 seasons at once. So do you want just like from COVID, or do you want from when he got here up until before this year?
No, do like basically the last 3 years, whatever you can do.
The last 3 years. Okay, the most recent 3 years, because I can tell you the first 3 years, he and Thomas Chabot played almost 1,500 minutes together. More than 50% of the time that he was on the ice was with Thomas Chabot. In the last 3 years, 1,312 minutes at even strength with Thomas Chabot, and only played 607 away from him. So for every minute he was on the ice without Chabot, he was on for 2 with him.
Yeah, that's not ideal. That's not ideal for the team or Chabot. And no, honestly, it's not ideal for Zaitsev either, because he's got to be out there more than he's probably comfortable being out there against some of the better players in the league. So, all around, that was bad utilization of Nikita.
This is, and fair enough. Like with the whole Thomas Chabot angle in this, this is where it gets crazy. Okay, let's play a little trivia. And I'm gonna say a quick word about our friends at FanDuel. But before that, the trivia question is: which defenseman did Nikita Zaitsev play the second most minutes with in the last 3 seasons? The answer is coming up after a quick word from our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can make every moment more at FanDuel. FanDuel, our friends, we're really excited about having them on board because they have so many great features and they make sports betting fun and easy. Do it responsibly, but new customers in the States, join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Plus, you can even do fun bets like same game parlay, and it's all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet on $150 free in free bets, whether you win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's the official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Nikita Zaitsev is officially a Chicago Blackhawk. What's your answer? Who do you think Zaitsev played the second most minutes with on the Sens defense?
I don't know the answer to this for sure, and I'm just thinking about who I know he's played with. My guess is going to be Nick Holden. I don't know if that's right. Is it right?
It's correct.
Yeah.
And get this, he played 556 minutes with Nick Holden. So he played twice as much with Thomas Chabot than any other defenseman. And then you have to go all the way down to Victor Mete, 176 minutes with Victor Mete. Like he was Chabot's partner for the last 3 years. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's unacceptable. It's so embarrassing as a franchise to put your best defenseman, your $64 million investment, paired with an anchor, with all due respect. He's an NHL defenseman, much better than we'll ever be. He blocks shots, sure. But that is so embarrassing to have Chabot play that much with Zaitsev. So he's free. And he hasn't been of late, dude. Zaitsev's been his partner the last week.
I know. He's been playing with them. And you notice, I don't know if we really want to get into this, but the fan reaction to Chabot lately has been negative. And I wonder what the common denominator there is.
Unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable.
Hey, here's a little fun side note. How long is it going to take for Shane Pinto to claim number 22 for himself?
Yesterday?
Yeah. I think he's already waiting outside of Pierre Dorian's office right now. Ready to, hey, get the equipment guys on this change. Number 22 is mine for the rest of my career.
Yeah, and he's not giving it up. No chance. Now, of note, and we have to get into this because it's the most important part, and Hawks fans, bear with us. We will give you a full Nikita Zaitsev scouting report coming up a little bit later. So the Senators are going to have $20+ million to play with this summer. $20+ million, Martian. What do they do with that? How soon do you think this gets moved up? Like, okay, let me ask you like this. What happens next? Alex DeBrincat or a defenseman?
I think the defenseman happens next, and you got to think they're gonna get that done probably before. I don't know if it's gonna happen before Friday. I think that might be a little too quick, maybe. But I think in the next week, obviously, before the trade deadline for sure, which is what, 9 days away? You said, or is it a week away? 8 days. So
sorry, It's 9 days today, but at 2 p.m. So we're beyond that. So I'm saying we're less than 9 days is a nice way to say it.
I would assume that they're going to acquire a right side defenseman with term in the next 8 days. That is a very safe assumption, I would say. Unless he really can't get one for the price that he's looking to get one for, then that would be the only reason why I could see that not happening. The DeBrincat deal is an off-season issue. I don't think they're going to negotiate in the middle of the season. Although it happens all the time.
Right, but new owner.
And when the new ownership comes in, of course, that's the other thing you're waiting for there. So definitely the right shot defenseman comes first.
The Ottawa Senators have the ability, now will they? Probably not, but they have the ability to add up to $21.85 million in cap at the deadline. So there's no chains to what they can get. How much do you think they will spend? Like, is there, like, I'm not saying Erik Karlsson's coming at the deadline, but, like, is there a limit, do you think, to how much they're willing to bring in a defenseman?
With a defenseman, I thought you were going to go a different direction and say weaponize that cap space for the rest of the year to clear up room for teams who are contenders. But that's another thing that would have to rely on new ownership to get the approval to do, right? I think that Nikita Zaitsev's cap hit is now Dorian's play money, right? That for the rest of the year. That's the way I kind of see that. Because I don't think that they want to change what's going on with their books too much before new ownership comes in. So I think that, they bring in a defenseman with, around the similar cap hit as Zaitsev, if maybe a little bit more, like maybe a couple million more. It's not going to be a huge difference.
And also Austin Austin Watson could be the next guy out, and he's at a $1.5 million cap hit. So all of a sudden, there's $6 million you just cleared out.
$1 million defenseman is a good defenseman usually. Good.
We won't get into names. We could get a little bogged down if we get into names. We'll touch on this more with Pilsy tomorrow on Locked On Senators. But what's your scouting report on Nikita Zaitsev for any Hawks fans who are wondering what they're going to get in number 22?
Well, from the tape to the boards, or from the tape to the glass, that's the Nikita Zaitsev way. You might see a few icings. You might see a few good block shots. Doesn't have the greatest net front coverage out there. I think the reading the play is a bit of an issue for him. But defending wise, without the puck, there's certain moments. He's actually pretty strong in front of the net when he has a man that he's got tied up. He can be physical at times, although not overly physical. You really can't be.
He's good at defending the net front until the puck gets there.
Yeah, he's good at providing a little bit of extra shots in front of the net. Sometimes penalty trouble. Guy, you're not really excited about the player coming your way. It's more about collecting those draft picks for the rebuild. That's the thing you're excited about.
And the Chicago Blackhawks have a ton of picks. I remember back when the Senators were in that stage of the rebuild, and you're like, look at all our picks. Well, now the Blackhawks can certainly do that. They now have 13 picks in the first 3 rounds of the next 2 drafts. They have 2 firsts in each of the years because they have Tampa's for Brandon Hagel. Then they have 3 seconds this year and 2 thirds, 2 seconds, 2 thirds next year after the Senators gave them a second and a third. Sens fans, if you don't love this trade, the way that I've coped, and you can if you want as well, the trade can read this: Alex DeBrincat plus future considerations to Ottawa for Zaitsev, the 7th overall pick last year, the 39th overall pick last year, a 2nd round pick this year, a 3rd round pick next year, and a 4th round pick in 2026. That feel better?
That's a little better. Yeah.
All right. We'll wait and see what's next. You got any final thoughts, Martian? Appreciate you jumping on because, hey, trade reactions are some of my favorite to do because everything is so fresh and we're all working through it together.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my final thoughts would be I'm excited about getting this done now. Sooner than later is always a good thing, and with this kind of thing, gives them time to figure things out. And then the other thing I'll say is like we did say, like the last few months or so, Zaitsev has looked better. So I'm really happy that he's going to get the fresh start that he has been waiting for, I think, and deserves. So all the best to Nikita Zaitsev.
All the best to Nikita Zaitsev with the Chicago Blackhawks. The Ottawa Senators paid him about $15 million. Thanks, Lou. Appreciate it. But again, I just want to reiterate because I think there's so many layers to this trade that I'm happy right now that they have this flexibility, but it's so stupid that they didn't keep Cody Ceci for one more season. I mean, they could have just traded him for Taylor Hall a year earlier. That would have been cool too. But for where they were with Cody Ceci, they should have just held on to him. And they've wasted so much time, effort, money in trying to make something out of it. And then they got a 2nd round pick for Connor Brown, albeit in 2024. And then they move a 2nd round pick to get rid of Nikita Zaitsev with 2 years.
They took the scenic route. They took the scenic route, Rob.
Well, guess
what? It took a long time. Although it wasn't.
It's all about the destination, and we'll see where the Ottawa Senators end up with this one. For @Lalime's Martian, you can follow him on Twitter with that handle. I'm Ross Levitan. You can follow us at Sens Central. Tomorrow, we'll have Pilsy's reaction to the trade, and TSN's John Abbott joins us on Locked On Senators. For then, good night until Pierre Dorion strikes again with another trade. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast trade reaction. The Locked On NHL Road to the Trade Deadline is presented by FanDuel. It's your team every day.